Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Rough, Alison McConnell and Darren Jackson are here with me. You can like, share and follow us on Facebook and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We'll be delighted if you could do that. We're looking ahead to the game tomorrow night, Scotland against the Czech Republic. We'll obviously talk about the possibility of Scotland winning that game and what it would mean as far as the coefficient internationally, certainly our ranking would be in a better place if we somehow manage to win this group that we're in at the moment. We're well aware of the playoff we have coming up against Serbia, but in this Nations League group, a win at Roughie suddenly puts us in a really strong position. We'd have a bit of a gap between ourselves and the likes of the Czech Republic in the group, and that would also serve as well if we could somehow win that group. Because you start looking to go into pot 2 in some of the draws and it changes the dynamics for Scotland's qualification hopes.
Yeah, and it gives us another playoff game for the World Cup as well, and that would be exciting as well if that could happen. But you're right, it'd be good to get out of this group of these pretty average teams and we started playing some decent teams like Belgium and Italy and Germany and the likes, and that's what would happen if we go up a league. We go into their groups, and I think the fans would find that more exciting than the teams that we're playing just now.
Yeah, they would, but let's take our time, Roughie, because we could be getting hammered by those big teams. I don't want to play them right now. I know they're all lucrative games and certainly better to watch, but right now I think the biggest problem, and we will hear from, hopefully, fingers crossed, Steve Clarke, the press conference is going to be underway within the next 20 minutes or so. In fact, I beg your pardon, it is underway right now, so hopefully we'll get some news from Steve Clarke ahead of that game against the Czech Republic. Of course, Paul Hanlon's been drafted into the squad, Darren.
Yeah, and fair play to Paul. Peter, he's played at a big club like Hibs for years, and never managed to get in because they have had good centre halves there. But it's the same with Considine. It is late in his career, but over the term, he's done well for Aberdeen. I mind a few years ago, it might have been about 2-3 years ago, he got Player of the Year for Aberdeen, and they did have the big Johnny Hayes and McGinn and players like that, the forward players that normally get Player of the Year. So boys who have just waited their time, as I say, Hanlon's playing at a big club like Hibs, he's waited his time and he deserves it.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing here, and a groundswell of I think, some very nice sentiment towards Andrew Considine when he got his first cap, Alison. Now, whether Steve Clarke was looking at it sentimentally, I'm not so sure. He's probably looking and thinking, well, I need somebody in there to try and do a job for me. And Considine is an old head. He's 33. Whether people think he's good enough to be an international player or indeed to continue as an international player over the course of the next year, that is open to debate. But nevertheless, bringing them in, letting them do a job, if it helps us along the way and they get a couple of caps, then all well and good. Certainly Considine seems to have a real feel-good factor among a lot of people, not only his fellow teammates, people who know him, people in the press have been good about it as well.
I think he has a bit of humility about him, and I think if you wait to 33 for your first cap, there's no question that you're coming in and you appreciate the stage that you're on, but I don't think there's any sentimentality involved in it at all, because as an international manager, you can't afford to think that way. You have to go out and bring players in that you think will get you over the line and get the job done. And I actually thought he coped with it very well the other night, considering it's his first exposure to that kind of level of football. I thought he done fine. I thought he handled the occasion well and showed his experience at times just to handle the game and come through it.
Yeah, listen, fair play to the lad. I'm not so sure he's, I think it's a stopgap. I'm not going to be in any way derogatory towards him. I just don't think he's at the level that we are looking at. But no harm to the boy. I thought he gave a good account of himself, and I think Steve Clarke was glowing in his praise of him, and rightly so, after the match. Whether we have players that can come in and go standards above and take us to another level, only time will tell. We'll hear from Steve Clarke and see what he's got in his mind ahead of that Czech Republic game. And interestingly enough, yeah.
Peter, sometimes it's the right place at the right time. Aberdeen had been playing three at the back and he was left-sided. He obviously didn't want to go with Porteous, who was obviously in the squad. Didn't want to go with him left-sided. So, as I said, I'm not saying that he'll be in there all the time, but it was just the right place at the right time. And he deserves a cap for the career he's had.
Yeah, certainly caught me by surprise. He came in out of nowhere. I mean, drafted into the squad and then starting certainly caught a few of us by surprise. But listen, he played well in the game. We got the result and we're moving in the right direction. And if Andrew Constantine gets more caps on the way to us moving and continuing to move in the right direction, more power to him. So we'll hear from Steve Clarke, as I mentioned, just on the point of the game itself. The Czech boss, Jaroslav Silhavi, he's not going to be there because he's picked up COVID. COVID, again, seems to be the key around not only international football but club football. We'll be discussing the Old Firm. Give us your thoughts on that, with Celtic with 4 players out as well, ahead of that big game coming up on Saturday. So we'll talk about Czech Republic and what they've got to offer and whether we can indeed get that confidence-boosting win, which would set a record that we haven't managed since, I think, Andy Roxburgh's days as Scotland manager, to go 8 games without defeat. So you can give us your thoughts on that. We'll read out as many of the mentions that we do get across our Facebook page. Afternoon, Peter and the team from a very soggy West Midlands, says Stuart Ramsey. So thanks to lots of people. Great to see you, says Alan Harper. Thanks very much to all of the messages and all the people joining us on Facebook. My apologies to people who are looking for us with a chat on the YouTube channel. I know a few people are unhappy about it, but apologies. We decided to stop it for the moment, because, especially going up to this game, because some people are using YouTube because they don't have an actual name on it, and the sectarian bile coming from 2 sets of fans on it, we decided just to close it down as a chat room on YouTube. Some people are unhappy with it. We can live with it. It's as simple as that. I'd rather have that than as having people having to read some of this poison that goes on there. But on Facebook, you've got an account. You can put your point to the guys and give us your thoughts on that as well. Hey, Roughie, Ronaldo has tested positive for COVID as well, so he's out of international football. Portugal are going to play Sweden, so it looks as if Ronaldo's out of the game as well. So that's a real blow as far as international football. Some of the people always like to see the world-class players featuring for their countries. So Ronaldo tested positive for COVID. We'll get Roughie's thoughts on that as well in a moment. And some other breaking news which has just come out, which is basically that 6 teams have expressed, uncertainty over whether they're going to be able to continue beyond Christmas if fans don't get into the stadium. So clearly there is a major worry in football, not only, I think, in the English Football League, but everywhere, Darren. If fans don't get in, we're about to see what I think will be the doomsday scenario unfolding very quickly.
Yeah, I just watched that on the television, and a few of the chairmans and chief execs were getting interviewed, and Lambo was interviewed as well, and just talking about having to get the fans back in. We know it's got to be safe, we understand that, but they're just and then, like, all of them actually said they must know, because they must have meetings and group chats and everything, and they all said it was 6 clubs could go by the time Christmas comes, not being able to pay the wages and all that. And I think Crew's game's off tonight, and we play at Blackpool, we play Crew on Saturday, so it's not great. And as we've said it a lot, that we're desperate to get fans back in. I don't think it's going to happen.
So not getting fans back in. Dougie Little has just said there, is this just attributed to the English Football League? It is at the moment, Darren, but I don't think it'll be too long before other chairmen and chief executives will be coming out and saying the same thing, especially here in Scotland.
Well, without doubt, Peter. I mean, the money they pay down there, there's more money down there, but the bigger the wages, the bigger wage bill you have, obviously, and they need help. They're looking help from the Premiership. They're looking help from the government, and I think we're the same. I mean, the smaller clubs, it's okay saying, well, they only pay that much, but they still have to pay the wages. And I said earlier, League One and League Two clubs, we're talking about trying to get maybe 500 people into the games. That keeps those clubs. And obviously, the further up the tree you go, you need more, but we've got to start somewhere and to help the smaller clubs. I think the quicker we try and get that, the better. But we've said all along, we've got to be safe with everything.
Yeah, and Jimmy Wright, I think, is indicative of how difficult this job is going to be for any football club pleading their case, fans wanting back into the grounds, chief executive, chairman talking about where they are. Jimmy Wright says, sad to say, guys, but speaking as a healthcare professional, I can't see fans back before next year. And Jimmy, amazingly, it's been something I've been saying for the last 6 months, Roughie. I didn't see fans coming back into any ground before the end of this year, and I have to stand by it and agree with what Jimmy's just said there, regardless of the financial calls of support from many clubs.
Yeah, I think we've said it all along. The vaccine is the big one. You know, I don't think there'll be any positive stuff until somebody comes up with that. I think you're right. I don't think there's any fans going to get allowed back into the stadium. As I say, a lot of the clubs are now budgeting for no fans coming into the stadium. I don't want to see any of the part-time clubs down the bottom of the league going out or folding or anything like that. I think a big decision has to be made now. I wouldn't have a problem with them saying, look, we're just going to go into storage until next year, and I think that'd be a positive move for them. We don't want to see them going into financial trouble. So just take a time out. A lot of the juniors have done it. You know, they're just saying, no, we can't do it. We can't play the players. And that's what we're going to do. And if they just have to bow out for 5 or 6 months, then so be it.
Yeah, I think I read yesterday, Alison, that Auchinleck Talbot are doing exactly that. They're just saying, look, we just cannot get to a situation where we can guarantee safety. Certainly can't play the players. So, you know, riding off the season.
The problem is it's a bigger societal issue. So when you look at what's happening just now within the hospitality industry, there's a real ripple effect then into clubs like Auchinleck, Talbot and Hull. When you think of so much of the finances generated within the junior ranks come from the social clubs that are affiliated with the teams and which put a lot of money into the running of the teams. When you take that away, it's a significant portion of their financial revenue and they're starved without it. It's not much different the higher up the tier you go for other clubs. When you take away people coming into the stadium, it's a huge drop in revenue. And I think you have to view it as part of a wider entertainment industry, be that if it's encompassed within hospitality or otherwise. But I think the time has come where you do have to go and say there needs to be some kind of intervention from the governments and there has to be some kind of financial help given to clubs. And I appreciate how tough that is. It's a very difficult decision because, as we discussed over the summer, you're going cap in hand and saying we're on our knees financially, yet you can point to finances that have been spent on recruitment and in bringing in additional personnel over the course of the season. So I don't think it's not a straightforward conversation of every club deserves a percentage, but there has to be a way of getting some kind of government help to those clubs who are desperately in need of it.
Yeah, I think Championship, League One and League Two certainly have a stronger case than anything that comes from the Premiership in Scotland. But then again, I'm sure there will be, circumstances where chairman and chief executives and owners will plead their case as well. You can give us your thoughts on that as well. Anyway, apart from that, I must mention that for the people that we mentioned across YouTube and Facebook that we said were winning a T-shirt, we are sending them out. Calm your jets. They'll be on their way to you, and you will get them almost certainly before Christmas. That's a stonewall certainty. But they are getting bagged up and sent out to people. So don't worry about it. I know some people are wondering where they're coming to or where they haven't been sent out yet, but they have indeed. Anyway, Old Firm game. Countdown will continue. We'll hear from Scotland shortly, but the countdown to Celtic against Rangers on Saturday continues. And of course, Celtic have put out a statement regarding El Hamid, who is out with COVID as well. This is what they had to say. Celtic confirm Hatem El Hamid has tested positive for COVID-19 while on international duty and is now required to enter a 13-day period of isolation. We're disappointed and frustrated that another player on international duty has tested positive during an international period, which is continuing to present huge challenges. We are maintaining close contact with international associations to ensure everything is being done with regards to the care and protection of our players, something which must be a priority. While FIFA regulations determine clubs are obliged to release players for international duty, going forward we are sure wider discussions will take place around this hugely important issue. And that's basically a line that says that clubs are not happy, Roughie, that their players are going on international duty, coming back and not available for them. And Celtic have paid quite a heavy penalty so far. 4 players could be missing that game. Big debate is whether Edouard is the man they throw in even when he comes back into the country on Friday night.
Yeah, I think that's the galling thing from the club's point of view, that they're doing everything in their power at club level. They're doing all the testing. They're doing everything by the rules. And then all of a sudden that your players go away and for whatever reason, they're coming back. And that'll be the upsetting thing for Neil Lennon, that they have done everything that they could. But it's the environment we're in just now. We can see it all over the place. It's not just us. It's Czech Republic. It's Slovenia. It's everybody. So I can see why he's upset, that because the amount of players the likes of Rangers and Celtic and the big clubs have of international players going away on duty is a much larger than most of the other clubs. So the reality is there's more going to happen. If you've got, say, 10, 12 club players away than somebody who hasn't got any, like Kilmarnock or Hibs or whoever. So, yeah, it's a worrying time, but unless somebody comes up with some strange rule that we're just going to stop international football, then it's just going to continue and it's going to get worse.
Does it sway the game in Rangers' favour, these 4 players, with a major dilemma for the manager Neil Lennon on what team he's going to put out, Alison, or is this just part and parcel of it? Maybe one of them would have potentially featured in the game, the other 3 might not have.
I think it definitely hinders your preparation. I think that's about all you can say. There's various ways of looking at it, and in some aspects you might look at it and say it puts a bit more pressure on Rangers, oddly enough, because if Celtic are depleted, if they start the game without a striker who's tormented them for so long, you would really then expect them to go and maximise that opportunity. So I ask a question mark and almost puts the onus on Rangers to say, well, if you can't beat Celtic when they're at full strength, when are you going to? But I think it definitely hinders their preparations. None of us know how ill Odsonne-Edouard has been. There are people who have tested positive for the virus, but who have been asymptomatic and are absolutely fine. We hear stories of varying degrees of how it affects people, so we have no inkling at the minute of how he is in terms of health, first and foremost, and then in terms of fitness, of how he's been able to train, whether he's trained alone, whether he's trained at all. I would be surprised, I think, if Edward starts. I really do. I think it'll be Ajeti, probably, that he goes with. And I'm also inclined to think that Lee Griffiths might even be in with a shout of starting it. I think he'll definitely go with a 3-5-2. And I think there will be debuts for a few people in there. I think as well he might be tempted to start with Laxalt too, who's just come in and has had very, very little game time over the last 12 months. But when we spoke to Neil Lennon the day after the window closed, he spoke about him being a really fit boy, really physically in good condition, and the fact he trained so well for so often. I wouldn't be surprised if he throws him in just to see how he goes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he will change the left back, Darren. It's up front where I think Celtic have got dilemmas. Not that Steven Gerrard will be overly surprised if Odsonne-Edouard suddenly took to the field on Saturday about 12:30.
Yeah, I think the left back will definitely play, Peter. I think if Edouard's not had any symptoms, he'll have been training. There's absolutely no doubt. Celtic will have had something out there to him that he'll be training. And you can't say, I don't know if he's had the symptoms or not, but if he's not had the symptoms, I think he'll start the game without doubt, because Ajetti's been injured with his hamstring. I would always play Lee and Lee Griffiths in a Old Firm game anyway, but I don't think he's up to. Klamala's probably the one who's the fittest out of the lot of them, but I don't think he'll play. But when you still think, Peter, you've got Rogic, you've got El Yunusi, you've got Frimpong come on the right, you've got McGregor and Cham and Brown. So I've always said I believe they're a bigger and better squad. This is going to be tested, but I still think they'll have a strong team. Their bench will obviously not be as strong.
Peter Ramsey makes
Cham
a good point. He says, "Yeah, Cham. I mean, listen, the great thing about these games, the amount of times everybody speculated on a starting 11, and then suddenly somebody comes out of left field. You think, oh, didn't see that coming." Peter Ramsey says Rangers have got injury worries too. Barisic, Helander. That's what Peter's worried about. Again, that's the other dilemma for this one, Roughie, is, he's suddenly got a team on a high, confident, playing well, scoring goals, not losing lots of goals at the back end. Steven Gerrard will go into this game with a fair bit of confidence, I think.
Yeah, got any confidence, obviously, if Edward is not playing. Edward has been a big player for Celtic, particularly against Rangers. If he was to miss this game, I think deep down they would say that's a massive bonus for us. But I agree with Darren. I think both teams have got enough in reserve to put out a pretty good side on the day. It's on the bench if things aren't going particularly well. You're not throwing on the same quality as what you would be in a massive game like this. So I think it's waiting to see what the team lines are. Turnbull's there as well. That I don't know whether he would throw him into that kind of environment, but he's certainly got the quality. So it's all about the managers making the right decision for me. And as you've just said there, numerous occasions something's been thrown in there that we didn't expect it.
John Allen says, I think all the pressure's on Rangers. If Celtic win, I think Rangers' challenge will take a big hit and Celtic will get stronger. And again, this is the psychology of these games. Do they have a major impact? Will it be down to... I don't think it will be down to just the Old Firm games. I don't know if you believe it will be, Alison, if you're going to tell me that these 4 games will have a significant bearing, but I just look at the both teams and I think they will drop points elsewhere.
Of course they will, but what I would also say is that if you take a wee look through the history books, what you'll find is that the first Old Firm game of the season tends to be a marker, and it tends to be a portent of what's to come over the course of the campaign. I think of the 4 games that you play, this is a huge one. I think it just sets the tone for the season, and I think whoever takes the spoils in it traditionally goes on then to win the league. If you look back over the history books, 9 times out of 10, that's how it's borne out. I think it's a massive game for both teams. It's intriguing because of the form that both teams go into. Steven Gerrard's already won at Celtic Park. He went last Christmas and took all 3 points. He knows what to do. But that goes back to my point about starting with Cham. I think Neil Lennon will go with Cham because I think in a couple of the Old Firm games last season, Celtic were overrun in the middle of the park. And I think if you put him in, there's a bit of more of a presence in there. There's a bit more steel in the middle of the park. I don't think he'll start with David Turnbull.
Billy Hutchison says 5-1 Rangers to get the... I think that might be his odds. I don't think that's Billy saying he's going to be 5-1 Rangers. He has put it in such a way that it's 5-1 Rangers. So Billy's quite confident. Billy, clarify that for me. Is that your scoreline or is that the odds in a Rangers win? I haven't looked at the bookies on this one just yet, but nevertheless, it's going to be intriguing. No fans, managers making their team selection, Rangers going into the game with positivity, Celtic obviously with a game in hand. Alison said something interesting there, Roughie, which is that this game, the first game, usually is an indicator of who's going to win the league.
I think it gives you bragging rights. Alison touched on the Rangers win at Christmas. You saw the reaction for Steven Gerrard. You saw the reaction for the Rangers players of being able to go to Parkhead and get a win. And that obviously made them think that that was going to make them go on and win it. You saw the reaction for the Celtic boys when they beat Rangers. So psychologically, I think the players take something from it. I mean, there's no guarantees. You said they're going to go through the season and not dropping points. But if you were to tell me that either one of them were going to win the 4 games against each other, I think that would have a big say in who's going to win the league. I don't think that's going to happen, But I think the first game psychologically will make a lot of people say, right, that's Rangers bust, or that's us going to do that. That's what these games do. They make people make these rash decisions, and that's what a win does. That's why it's important that you get that win.
Yeah. Stevie says, I think Rangers could win this one with Celtic's main men out. And again, it'll change as we get ever closer to it, because Darren, who's played more than a few Old Firm games, is well aware that every now and then a player that you're relying on can suddenly be out of the game. It's a body blow, or suddenly somebody just pops up and surprises everybody with a goal in the game to change it dramatically. We are certainly looking forward to it, and the build-up will continue all the way through this week on Celtic against Rangers. Interestingly enough, Alison, I noticed that Rangers not surprised with the verdict not proven yesterday on Steven Gerrard's SFA charge. He wasn't happy with the challenge on Alfredo Morelos, and I think he had every right to voice his displeasure at the manner of the challenge. Whether there was any bias in it, I'm not so sure. It was just one of those ones where I thought the referee got it wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I don't think there was much to his comments either. I think it's a bit of a storm in a teacup, to be honest with you. I think that there's nothing new in players coming out, managers coming out and defending their players. I think it was his comments in the immediate aftermath of the game, I think, they're emotional, and they're just in direct response to a question when you're still stewing over things that have happened on the park. I think we can happily move on from it now.
Ian Noble's a big Dons fan, says 1-0 to Celtic Griffiths. Gordon McFadden, who's a Rangers fan, says Rangers will take the points 2-0. I'm inclined to think we will have a fully fit squad, and that's the joy of it all. I think the great thing about these games is suddenly you can be a hero. Darren, you've played in a few. Suddenly you can be a hero, or suddenly you just have to go into a darkened room and lock the door.
Yes, Peter, I can remember the year we stopped to 10. We played the Scottish Cup game at Celtic Park, and I lost the ball at the halfway line. Albert's got it, played McCoyston and scored, and that was us out the cup. So you remember the good things in your career, but you've got to remember the bad things, and that was a nightmare for me.
Yeah, I remember, I think Alison gave you a 2 out of 10 in the Stars in the Evening Times and Herald at the time. She absolutely slaughtered you.
That was good for me.
I'm too young. I'm too young. I wasn't working there.
Is that right? I gave him a 2, to be perfectly honest with you. No, I mean, that's the great thing about it. I mean, listen, it was absolutely. It was your second touch to try and control it that worried me. But interestingly enough, Roughie, I thought it was great. He just touched on players who absolutely revelled in it. I mean, McCoist was just that. The game was made for Ali McCoist. It's that type of game that he absolutely revelled in. And of course, he mentioned another player there who I always felt sorry for Big George Alberts, because he was such a gentleman. They rolled him out, Roughie, for every press conference, because, as you know, some players don't like doing the press ahead of an Old Firm game, but George was always up there for it, possibly because he was always up for hitting something from 25, 30 yards into the roof of the net anyway.
Yeah, well, as Dan said, I've never played in one of these games, and I keep hearing a lot of the players who have played in them saying, you either get caught in the headlights or you don't. As soon as you walk out there, you've got to be able to handle it, or you better just stay in the dressing room, because if you don't handle it, you're in big trouble. And I think we saw on numerous occasions players who have come into that game for the first time, and you can see the look in their face, and the first 20, 25 minutes just bypasses them. So that's why I think you need a lot of experience, a lot of players who have dealt with the situation. Obviously, there's no crowd there this time. I think that would make it a lot easier if it was your first Rangers Celtic game. But I think you've still got to deal with everything that goes with it.
Yeah, I'm enjoying some of the banter that's going on the Facebook, because this isn't just hotting up. It's only Tuesday. Also, Kevin
Peter,
McManus says the Hammer, he was a player.
Peter, I've got to say that you talk about being it's the biggest game in the world for me. I mean, the biggest game for the Edinburgh people is the Edinburgh Derby. The Dundee Derby is the biggest in Dundee. But I've got to tell you that the atmosphere, you don't get atmosphere like you maybe go over to Galatasaray and all that, but the atmosphere is just beyond belief. It's the best. I mean, you've got to handle it. And you spoke about the players there, McCoy, Stalberg, Gorham, who handled it, many more. But you look at the Moravcheks and the Larsons and Paul McStays and all that handled it. Peter, big players handled. It's massive. It's an incredible game to play in.
It's funny, actually. I'm going to slightly disagree with you on this. I understand where you're coming from, saying it's the best as far as the whole build-up and that. When fans were allowed in, I always liked the fact that there was 7,000 away fans there, so that created the atmosphere. The atmosphere for the last 100 years has been poisonous. That's certainly not been the best in it. Something that absolutely sticks in my throat. That's the one thing that I don't think is good about the game. But in effect, Roughie, that's what the attraction is, because of the hate that has gone on through the years. That's what's the big appeal for everybody. They almost look into it as if to look at, it's like looking through the window, all the mad people fighting, because it's got that notorious tag over the last 100 years with the religion and everything, and the fighting, and the Scottish Cup final in the 1981, which resulted in all sorts of new laws coming in with regards to drinking. It's certainly one of the most notorious derbies. It's not certainly one of the best derbies as far as football's concerned. Excitement, I get where Darren's coming from. If I was looking at derbies, I'd love to go to a River Plate Pocket Juniors one. There's a few other derbies I'd like to go to. I've been to Liverpool. Everton doesn't even hold a candle to Celtic and Rangers. But Roughie,
I've been to Barcelona, Real Madrid. It's nothing, because there's 300 Real Madrid fans, and that's El Clasico, obviously. 300 Real Madrid fans up in the gods in a cage, watching down. And I totally agree with what you're saying about the religious side of it and all that. And it's not right. I'm not saying that everything's right about the game, but it's just the game itself. For a player to play in it, it's breathtaking.
Yeah. I'm not for a minute suggesting you are. What I'm suggesting is that, in effect, Roughie, is where the main attraction of this derby comes from.
No, I think you're right to say that the supporters probably treat it a bit different for the players. I think I get where Darren's coming from, because as young footballers, we've been brought up in Rangers Celtic games. We've been brought up with what they mean. And then obviously, if you're lucky enough to get to play in one, you have to realise, how important it is to everybody surrounding it. But I get where you're coming from with the fans. Possibly they're spoiled it a wee bit down the years, but I wouldn't say that's the majority. I would say that's a minority. But to play in one of these games would, for me, feel like the biggest derby there is. Basically because we're not brought up in a Madrid derby, we're not brought up in a derby over in Argentina, we're not brought up in the other derbies. We're just steeped in what we've seen growing through our ages. We know how important it is to everybody.
I mean, Peter, I've been lucky enough to play in the Edinburgh and the Dundee, and at the time they were massive for me, because you wanted to win them, because you know what it meant to the fans, you know what it meant to the city. So I'm not taking anything away, but just how big it is. It's special.
Listen, I'm not being a killjoy in this here. I mean, William Innes says Darren played in these games. Did you, Peter? No, William, you're absolutely right. I didn't, but I've watched 1,000,001 of them, and I'm only telling you that the best derbies, as far as Celtic and Rangers are concerned, the best derbies that have been played, I would go as far as to say, were in the 60s and the early 70s. And the reason I would suggest they were the only period where you could look at them as the best derbies, is because, quite simply, Celtic and Rangers were reaching European finals on a regular basis. They had players, some of them world class, in that game. We've been, over the decades, treated to the odd one or two sprinklings of world-class players in this derby, but it's not the best derby as far as football is concerned. You need to be off your nut to think that Celtic Rangers was the best derby as far as football. 60s and 70s, Roughie. That's when the best derby was for Celtic and Rangers, because they had absolutely top-drawer players who were dominating European games.
Yeah, but I think if you ask any football supporter, if it's Rangers and Celtic, the best derbies are the ones that you win. You know, that's what they'll say. You know,
That's not the argument, though.
Football,
If
they won the game, that was the best derby I've ever seen.
Absolutely, but that's not the argument. The
Peter,
argument is quite simply, it's a brilliant...
I never said it was the best football. I said the occasion, the occasion. I never said that it was the best football match in the world.
Yeah.
The whole occasion is special, without doubt.
Having been in, obviously, like Peter covered a lot in a working environment, I think sometimes in a traditional sense, not obviously pre-COVID days when the ground is full before the teams have even come out for the warm-up, I think sometimes it must have felt as a player as stepping into this gladiatorial arena. The place was fraught. I think when you go back to the evening kickoffs that we had maybe 20 odd years ago, you used to have that infamous 6:05 kickoff, or even a 3 o'clock kickoff. I think it feels different to the noon games, to the early afternoon kickoff games, but there's a frenzy to it sometimes even before a ball is kicked. And there are particular derbies where even before the game has started, there's just a sense of something in the air that you know it's going to be a crazy afternoon. They don't all have that hallmark, but every now and again you just get a feeling of it, even in the build-up to the game and the hours before the game. And I can't imagine what that must feel like to be sitting in a dressing room and have that.
I'll be honest with you, I wish I hadn't said it because it's opened a can of worms. Everybody's steaming into it. Billy Hutchison says, you're sounding worried, Peter. Believe me, Old Firm games, I love them. I love the build-up 5 minutes before it cranks up. You know, you can feel the tension, the atmosphere. It was a great derby until, of course, they spoiled it just before when we had fans in. They spoiled the Glasgow derby on the basis that there's only now 300 or so of the opposition fans allowed into it. So that's killed it completely. But that's, again, another form of stupidity that exists in Scottish football. But nevertheless, Billy, I absolutely love them. I think they're great derbies. Sean is complaining because we're talking about a derby which takes place on Saturday and we should be talking about League Cup matches tonight. Calm your jets, Sean. We'll get there. We'll get plenty of time. I did promise you that we would actually get to Scotland as well, because this show tries to bring you things up to date as it's happening. The press conference is over. Here's what Steve Clarke had to say about the Czech Republic tomorrow night.
All the players are in contention. Everyone who's played over the last 2 games haven't done their case any harm. And the ones that play tomorrow have got a chance to, like I said the other night, they have a chance to make themselves undroppable from the squad, and that's what we want. But the ones that are outside the squad just now also have a month, probably less than a month, probably 3 weeks before we name the next squad, 3 weeks to push themselves right to the front of my thoughts as well. So, good time to be a Scottish player, ready to play international football.
Yeah, and I listen, at this moment, fair play to Steve Clarke. He's getting them organised. You can see what he's trying to do with it. He wants us to try and keep clean sheets, as many as possible. And that line that he's just delivered there, Roughie, is quite simply, Lee Griffiths, try and get yourself ready, and other players who suddenly can become available to him. He's throwing down the gauntlet. You've got 3 weeks. Yeah. Steven Naismith, I think, is a good shout from Charlie Adam. I think, to be fair, Steven Naismith should be in that. Not just because he's on this programme. He does other programmes as well. But I think if Naismith and Griffiths were suddenly available as well, whether it be off the bench, suddenly he's got better options.
Yeah, I would agree with the Serbia game. Naismith would be a better bet than Griffiths. I don't think for a minute we're going to go to Serbia and play with 2 strikers. So it has to be somebody that does the dual role, and Naisy does that more than Griffiths. I think Griffiths would be a better bet coming off the bench. But again, we want to go into this game. I hope we do win our next game, so we go into it when everybody's positive. I know I've been a bit negative for a wee while, but I've shoved all the hype into the background now, and I'm just taking wins. I don't care about performances now, and I hope we do get better. That's all I'm saying. Because if we don't get better, we won't win in Serbia. We have to get better. It's okay saying, we're going for record wins and we're beating this team and beating that team. This is a different game altogether. I've said it on numerous occasions. It's good having a record, but if you want a record of beating San Marino and Cyprus and a Czech Republic pub team drawn against Israel, and you think you're going to go to Serbia and beat them, you better have another thinking, because this is a different league. It's a different quality of player you're playing against. I hope we can do it, but I think we just need to play better. We can't go into games playing 45 minutes and saying, with a shot on target there, right, we're going to go to Serbia and duff them. So let's just keep winning.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to knock you for it, because some people think sometimes a wee bit too harsh on you with your opinion. The last week, Roughie, I have noticed that you have become a grumpy old man, and we're quite happy to live with that, because clearly when things are starting to look a wee bit better, we need to get a sense of perspective, and I think Roughie's right to point that out. It's not exactly the cream of European football that we're getting the results against Alison. I personally think Steve Clarke is 100% correct when he mentions in the post-match press conferences, get the wins, build the confidence, get the momentum, let's try and get there.
Listen, the first thing he's done is try to make Scotland hard to beat. It's the one thing that's been missing for so long, and I think it has to be the foundation of any successful new chapter. That's where it has to begin. So I think you have to applaud the early shoots of that, and I think you have to take it however it comes. Can Scotland play better? Of course they can. I mean, let's be honest, the games have been a hard watch. They have not been easy on the eye at all. But I think you have to take the momentum, and you have to take, crucially, the confidence that comes with that. You would like to hope that they go into this game tomorrow night and sustain that. The other thing to point out is that even winning this Nations League group will not guarantee you a World Cup playoff. I think it's only the top two ranked Nations League winners who go in to the route of the 10 other runners-up. I know that sounds a bit complicated, but essentially what you have to keep in mind is that if you do win your group, you have to win it well if you're still going to go in and get a World Cup playoff place through that route. So these games are important to you, but I think what you've got to look at just now is it's all eyes towards Serbia. It's about preparing and trying to sustain the positives that we've seen, the very, very fragile positives, but you want to take them nonetheless and try and continue it tomorrow night by coming out of it unscathed.
I think Greg Stott has summed it up brilliantly. He goes, geez, Roughie. Yep, absolutely. We've been saying that for the last week about the big man. There's something not right in the background about him, but maybe this is the new Roughie for 2020, 2021, a new, harder, less likeable Roughie.
Just the point that I'm trying to make, and Alison makes a good point there, that we're hard to beat. I don't know if we're hard to beat, because we've not played anybody. When we played Belgium and we played Russia, that was the challenge. I don't think we've played anybody. I mean, team the other night left. That team the other night there left 9 players at home. They played in the Ireland team. Yeah. So it's very difficult to take massive positives out. You've got to take some kind of positive. I'm not disagreeing with that, but you've got to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, listen, you're absolutely right, Roughie. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, this next game, Andy Robertson's not going to be there. He's suspended. Liam Cooper's not available. So he's going to have to, tweak it here and there again. But the proof is in the pudding in the big games against better sides, Darren. And quite simply, they go to Serbia, and we're well aware of it. They go to Serbia, not as favourites, but at least we're hoping that somehow, and I think this is our best bet, or this is only my opinion, 70 minutes, 0-0. If he goes 5-4-1, keeps it organised, 4-5-1, whatever system he operates. It's all about trying to stop the opposition scoring, and then maybe a set piece, a Lee Griffiths free kick, something if he's available. Somebody has to do something, I think, from a set piece, Dan, because Ruffy's right. We've been following them for the last 5 or 6 years, seeing central defender after central defender, create havoc, give away a goal, allow the other team to score, and we know we can't score 2 goals to win a game. So we know what we're up against here.
Of course we do, Peter. I mean, when you look at the squad, I'm not a big Palmer fan, but Steve Clarke likes him. Palmer will be back, Cooper will be back, McKenna will be back, Tierney will be back. Obviously, Andy Robertson's not playing tomorrow. Armstrong will be back, Christie will be back, and you're hoping that Naismith will be back, and you're hoping that Lee Griffiths is going to be back, Peter. So it could be a totally different squad. And I would have had, now whether Lenny would have wanted it, but I would have had Lee Griffiths in that squad to come on, like the Israel game, come on with 10 minutes to go. And I'm not just, I said this, I'm not just saying that because he came on against St Johnstone and scored the goal. That's what Lee does. He scores goals out of nothing. So it will be a completely different squad. And sometimes, yes, I think you've got to start. A Scotland team, I've got to start, and I played in a team that didn't lose a lot of goals. You've got to start by not conceding goals. They have to create more chances. You said a stat earlier, Peter, that if they win tomorrow, that'll be the best, or it'll be the same as since Andy Roxburgh. Well, does that mean Craig Brown, who qualified for 2 tournaments because he didn't go 8 games, isn't the best manager or that? So please forgive me for
Darren. Andy Roxburgh beat France twice and Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it wasn't in the 8, Roughie. Please forgive me for putting in that stat. I just put it in on the basis that basically that's what will happen tomorrow. He will equal that record. But they were playing nobody under Andy Roxburgh. There's only 1 or 2 games.
Thing.
Yeah,
I get it. What you said,
that.
It's a confidence thing, because if you don't lose goals, you're confident. We got 1 chance. Dykes got 1 chance. We only created 1 chance, which is disappointing. But we created 1 chance and he took it. Do you know what I mean? I think Dykes will play. If Dykes is fit, Dykes will play. Because he's the one that can hold it up. Then you've got other players running off him.
Alan Davison says, so negative, man. It's pathetic. Alan, it's not pathetic. We are trying to offer you our observation and our opinion on what is before us. Your eyes can't deceive you. There's no point in giving it, all this Braveheart mumbo jumbo and hoping that, just because we're positive it's going to be a great listen. We're giving you it realistically how we see it. I think it'll take a set piece. Why? Because we can't create anything from open play. That goal the other day there was the first one in a while where we've actually managed to create something where suddenly Ryan Fraser finds Stephen O'Donnell, and Stephen O'Donnell puts a lovely ball in for Dykes to get on the end of. They're few and far between. So, if it takes somebody coming off the bench and scoring a goal, I couldn't care if it's a deflection off 15 legs and then somehow goes over the line with VAR helping us. As long as it means a win against Serbia, we'll absolutely all be delighted, and we'll have Steve Clarke posters up on our wall. So, fingers crossed with that. You've heard from Steve Clarke. We'll hear more from him on tomorrow's show as well, and look ahead to the game. Fingers crossed. You can give us your thoughts on this one as well, and what you think is going to happen in the game, whether you think Scotland can win against the Czech Republic, or indeed this is where, as Roughie says, coming up against slightly better opposition than what we've played before, we come a cropper. Couple of things I want to get off my chest for everybody to give us their point on, and Sean Grogan nicely says, and now the League Cup news. Yes, there are League Cup matches, and I'm really looking forward to them. Betfred Cup to look forward to. Here's a look at the fixtures for Sean Grogan. These are dedicated to Sean. Kelly against Dunfermline. There's a story attached to that one. Inverness, Cowdenbeath, Stenhousemuir, Airdrie, Stranraer against Albion Rovers, Peterhead, Brecon City, Alloa against Edinburgh City, Dundee United, Kelty Hearts, Hearts against Raith Rovers, and the other section is Montrose, Elgin City, Ross County, Arbroath, Falkirk, Clyde, Forfar, Hibernian, Greenock Morton against Queen's Park, Brora Rangers against Cove Rangers, Queen of the South Partick Thistle, and Ayr United against Annan Athletic. Now, the story I was going to say, Alison, is there's only 5 Kilmarnock players and first team players available. He's going to have to play some youngsters. Alec Dyer's not happy about that, but he's going to play it. He made a request to Livingston to try and move their game from the weekend to Monday or Tuesday to give him some time for his first team players to be available. Livingston were having none of it. Are they being unfair?
I think on a personal level, yes, I think they are being unfair. But what you are seeing now is the ramifications of this summer and everything that went on coming home to roost. Because the minute that you say, well, hang on a minute, it's not a full quota and their squad's been decimated, people start to talk about sporting integrity and the decisions that were made over the summer, and we go back to what happened. And the bottom line is they're going to have to get on with it. They're going to have to play the game. They're going to have to either fulfil the fixture or say that they can't and forfeit the game, which won't happen. So they're just going to have to get on with it. But what you would expect is that between now and the end of the season, there are very, very few teams who are not going to suffer similarly. All teams, you talk about this bubble. See, after this round of League Cup games, I would be intrigued to see what it does to the bubble that all the Premier League players have been in up until now, because they've all been exposed since last week. They've all been exposed to players who have combined football with part-time jobs and who are mixing largely with other members of the public and then getting onto the field. So I think as the season progresses, everyone is going to find themselves in a very similar position.
Yeah, I think we're heading to some very difficult waters over the next couple of months with the unfolding medical situation and the unfolding financial situation that is facing more than a few clubs. Andy Phillips, I think, sums up the League Cup tonight. Thistle are in trouble, 5-0 Queen of the South. So thanks for that point, Andy. There, I mean, it's a relevant point. We have to read out as many as we possibly can, Roughie. There's no point in not reading them out. But I mean, it's a good game. I'll tell you, is it a shout for game of the night, Roughie?
Oh, that'd be interesting. I'd love to be up at Tannadice. I'd love to see the Dundee United Kelty Hearts game. Obviously, after what happened with Peterhead at the weekend, I think Dundee United have got something to prove. So I think that would be a good game to be at, to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Who do you think is going to win it, Roughie?
Possibly Dundee United.
Right, okay. We'll pass that news on to him since we haven't seen him for a while. There is the number 6. That's next week's competition. Anyway, talking of competitions, by the way, this Friday we're launching a competition. We're giving away the iPad. We're giving away 3 Legends T-shirts, and we'll be giving away some brilliant Legends prints in frames as well for you. So it's going to be a fantastic competition. Chance for you to win an iPad. It's always nice ahead of Christmas to get something like that. Greg Stott says, listen, Scotland against Greece, Hampden, qualifying for Euro 96. We never created much. It was a tough watch, but it was a must-win. We were solid at the back, and John Collins sent in a great ball into the box, and Ali McCoy scored with a glancing header. Yeah, I mean, listen, Darren, I remember when you were playing for Scotland, Craig Brown, I can remember the press. We were all saying, you guys were a hard watch. It was, you were getting slaughtered because it wasn't great, but we're still winning 1-0.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad when you've got McCoy and McAllister and McStay, Collins and Jury and Gallagher. So it wasn't bad, to be fair. But you're right. Our game was all about not conceding, because Scotland teams, like over the history, Peter, have never really created an awful lot of chances in games. When we had maybe the Dalglishes and all that, it was a little bit different, but not as many. But I think I've said before, in that tournament we conceded 3 goals, and we knew that we had goal scorers in the team. So I think that's the difference when you had players, as I said, like a McCoy, Jury, Gallagher, John McGinley, who scored lots of goals in the Premiership, scored at international level. When you know you've got goal scorers, it makes a bit of a difference. And that's where we're talking about Griffiths. When you need a goal, you need someone of that ability that can score goals out of nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. John McGinley, great player for Bolton as well at the time. Just a couple of things, Alison.
Duncan Shearer as well. Duncan Shearer.
Well, Duncan Shearer actually has written an article today saying he was very much in the same boat as Andrew Considine. He thought Scotland's caps were going to pass him by, and just a little twist of fate. Suddenly, maybe a goal, maybe a good performance, and you suddenly can maybe rack up 3 or 4 caps that you never thought you were ever going to get. So we started with Andrew.
I was 28 when I got my first cap, and I'd never been at any level. 19, 17s, 21s, any level. So you just
that's good man management. That.
Yeah, team managers. It's a good point. I mean, Roughie and I didn't work together. Roughie and I didn't work together in 1998, but we couldn't believe it when you were capped. But anyway, it was. I'd take 10 Darren Jacksons right now for Scotland. I have to be honest with you. That's what we want. We want a battling player who'll give their all for the jersey. David Tennant says Rangers will be fine on Saturday as long as there's no handball or blatantly offside goals. Still people talking about the old Firm game as well. Anyway, lots of people. Shearer was a goal machine. Don's got him when he was too old, says Ian Noble. And Ian would know he watched Aberdeen through the great years and he's seen a few good players in his time. So to get those comments, people positive about Scotland, some not so, some think we're a wee bit too negative about it. We'll find out tomorrow when they play the Czech Republic. Fingers crossed they can get the win. Gabriel Antoniazzi will be doing a report from Hampden tomorrow on that game. Now, just a couple of things. Alison, I was going to ask you about Project Big Picture. It's worrying down south because this is basically, I think, some people think, this is an English story. This is not an English story. This power grab that some of the big clubs in England are trying to pull off at the moment because of the financial, situation that the EFL clubs find themselves in. This power grab has got implications right across European football because the big clubs want to try and take the power and strangle the rest of the clubs into submission and basically work out their own deals, whether it be Champions League deals, whether it be a bigger part of the pie that they're orchestrating from themselves with TV deals elsewhere. It has huge implications for all of football, I think.
The ramifications are massive, aren't they? The ripple effect of it too just surrounds the game in its entirety, and I think it's something that we have to be very cautious about, and I think that there's more than a few chairmen up here will be watching that story unfold with some interest over the next couple of weeks and the next few months because the consequences are huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be watching it, of course. Roughie and I always talk about, I'm never a fan of, he was a great player, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, but I've got him on my list, Roughie, of men to watch, people who want to represent their clubs and try and carve up European football. If Karl-Heinz Rummenigge and a few other clubs had their way, there would only be 16 mega clubs playing each other in the Champions League, and the rest of us can all get stuffed.
Yes, as we spoke about it on numerous occasions, it's greed. It's just greed, wanting more of the pie instead of being in it collectively. And we've seen it as that's the way it's been going for ages, and let's just hope they don't get their way. That's the bottom line. But I'm glad you asked Alison that question, the Project Big Picture, because I thought all the cinemas were shut.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew that was coming, by the way. I know. Ali was on the case, but thank God you'd read up on it, Ali, because the blank look on Roughie's face there as well. Anyway, Arsene Wenger's doing the rounds at the moment. He's 70 years of age. I think he's on a few talk shows as well, which is good because I think it's always good to listen to him. He looks upon his achievement in the second part of his Arsenal career as probably just as valuable as when he was winning titles for Arsenal, because obviously they paid that stadium off quicker than anticipated, and he still kept him qualifying for the Champions League. But he came out with a great line that it reminds me of Gordon Strachan, and I think it's pertinent today. It's certainly pertinent on this show and shows on the BBC and BT Sport and Sky Sports as well. we pride ourselves here in having lots of good fans who actually know what they're talking about, love their club, and put across some very good points about Scottish football, English football, and, of course, on a wider scale, European and world football. But Arsene Wenger said, regardless of the criticism that comes your way, today it seems the minority has a big dictatorship. They dictate what is talked about. Therefore, if you have 50 people on social media being negative, it can somehow get more attention than 60,000 people in a stadium. And Alison, it reminds me of Gordon Strachan, who always said to me, hang fire you, when your show, when you were hosting it on Radio Clyde, if two people called in and said I was an idiot, does that mean I'm an idiot? I'm a loser, I'm a moron. Does that mean, and I understood where Gordon was coming from, just because two or three people voice their concerns about something, that is not generally the picture of what is out there.
I think it's dangerous to assume that social media is an adequate reflection of society and opinions as a whole. I think it's an echo chamber so many times. I think all of us who are on it, Peter, you and I, who work in the industry, and you might tweet something or you write a column that people don't agree with, and all of a sudden you'll have a pile-on of people just jumping in to object to your point of view without reading things or without being willing to have any kind of proper discourse about it. I think we've all experienced that, but I think it would be dangerous to see it as a reflection of any significant body. I think what you get are people who something like Twitter, which should actually create an open-mindedness and should actually educate and open your mind and open your eyes to alternative points of view, is actually the opposite. What it does is it creates a very narrow stream where you only listen to people who purport the same views that you do and carry often the same kind of bigotry that you do. And I think he's right. I think sometimes you hear dissenting voices and they drown out the more sane majority at times.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that in mind, I only have to look to last week. I think I tweeted or I mentioned something on the programme, and I got an absolute kicking on Twitter from one or two individuals, which made me smile. Nevertheless, I'm sure we'll get more than a few kickings as we head up towards the Old Firm game if we say anything that you don't agree with. That's the joy of it all. It's all about, it's only a game. It's only a sport. It's football, it's not life and death. And that's something that brings me nicely to Dougie Liddle, who's mentioned something just before we go. He says, Peter, have any of the panel seen the trailer for the documentary The Three Kings, Steen, Shankly, Busby? Has anybody seen it? I didn't know
I saw the trailer for it. I saw the trailer for it.
Is it a BBC programme?
No, it's not. It's, the name eludes me of who's done it, but it looked excellent. I saw it on Twitter. Actually, yesterday, I just saw it's a very brief segment of it, but it looks excellent. Yeah.
You see, Ali, Twitter is good for some things. With every invention, there's a positive and there's a negative in there as well. Anyway, it's the type of thing, Darren, we'll be glued to because, I love a good documentary. If it's done well, you're right, you can get right into it.
Brilliant, Peter. The Tottenham one, the Man City documentaries have been different class. I've gone off football. I've just watched the David Attenborough one, and that is just absolutely mind blowing. That's fantastic. But I'm sure that one will be brilliant because there is three absolute legends of the game.
Yeah, and I finish on this note. Every now and then I look towards Roughie, his birthday, and I think about a present, and then maybe Christmas and I think about a present or something out of the blue. I mean, I remember one year I got him a canvas of him in his Scotland jersey in the Brazil game. You were happy with that, Roughie, weren't you? More
than happy, yeah. Fantastic.
Absolutely. This year, I think I'm going to get you Nicholas Bentner's book because it's an autobiography. It's an autobiography. I've just been reading some of the stories from it, Roughie, and this is a guy who knows how to write an autobiography. It's a tell-all. There are no holds barred, Roughie. He's just telling it like it is. And as soon as I looked at it, I thought, that's Roughie's Christmas present sorted out. This is it. This is how you should write your second autobiography, Roughie.
Yeah, I'm too loyal to my teammates.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, apart from anything else, listen, join us on the football programme. If you want opinions, you'll get them here. We've got interviews, managers, players, and of course, we try to keep you up to date with everything. You can like, share, and follow us on our Facebook, and also you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you do indeed get the chance, you'll get an opinion. Sometimes you like it, sometimes you don't. It's only a game of football. Remember that as we build up to Celtic against Rangers. Tomorrow, we'll hear more from Steve Clark. Gabriel Antoniazzi will be out at Hampden. Fingers crossed. I love it when we can all say, come on, Scotland. Let's hope we can get a win against the Czech Republic. We'll discuss it in greater detail. Just before we go, Darren Jackson, give me your prediction.
I think they'll win 2-0.
Alison.
1-0.
Save yours for tomorrow, Roughie. From myself, Peter Martin, to you. Thanks for watching.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit Arnold Clark